Well, $8.5 billion. That's how much the problem of substance abuse is costing the state of Missouri every year. According to new estimates by the Department of Mental Health, it comes as a state task force continues work on better connecting those in need with the resources to help. Missouri Capitol Bureau Chief Joe McLean was at the task force's meeting today and reports from Jefferson City.
$8.5 billion is a lot of money. For scale, that's more than the state expects to collect in individual income tax this next year. And the department got to that number, though, by adding up all of the patients it serves, the program it's offered, the employees it's hired, and many other costs. Missouri's Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Task Force heard from the Departments of Mental Health and Corrections Thursday, discussing what resources are available, but more crucially, how to get those services to the people who need them.
Demand will always exceed supply, but we have to get people cognizant of what's available in their communities and connect them where they can. Because a lot of people, 988, for example, there's still a ton of people who've never heard of that.
That 988 hotline is the suicide and crisis hotline, meaning it's not just for those dealing with suicidal thoughts. It's an informational resource for all kinds of mental health issues. Bach said substance abuse in particular makes other problems worse.
And as an addiction takes over, people start losing jobs, friends, housing, transport. It cycles.
The state agencies say the good news is every dollar spent addressing substance abuse early has an outsized effect in reducing that $8.5 billion ongoing cost.
I think we have to recognize that substance use impacts every facet of people's lives, and whether they keep their jobs, go to their jobs, go to jail, it impacts all of us.
The task force is set to continue work until this General Assembly expires, and it will issue a final report with recommendations of what the next legislature should do. In Jefferson City, Joe McLean, WGEM News.